What's happening, guys? Steve Mayeda here with the Daily Awesome Podcast. Welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in or watching us on YouTube or wherever you're zoning in on what we're talking about. We are in the midst of a call, our Men's Development Excellence call. It's August 17th, 2017, and it's 2 a.m. We started this call at 8 p.m. on the 16th of August. So we're doing good stuff, and it's stacked right now, man. We got 8 guys and they're talking about good stuff. But what we're talking about is our evolution of independence. In fact, we're on the call talking about a ton of stuff, how it moves into tribalism, how that moves into how we grew up and so on. But I think I want to talk about this one point, which is so important for men to get. How do we grow into our independence without giving up on all the wisdom that we have, from growing up, from our forefathers, from the different people that we've learned from? And this is an area where we can really get caught in a trap. I know for myself personally, it's a big point of growth and it's still growing. It's a big point of growth with a lot of guys on here. There's a guy who's in his 60s and he's talking about his different evolution of it, with a guy who's in his early 30s talking about his evolution. It's amazing. So one of the things that gives us so much meaning is being a part of something. In fact, like these calls, click the free stuff link down below, find out all the groups we have. We're a badass community. I want you to be a part of it. But being a part of something is key. Your history is key. And one of the things that we go through is young men going into adulthood and so on is this break from what we've learned and how we've grown up. And so there was an example here from a guy who grew up in a Native American culture and a guy who grew up in, Pennsylvania culture and American culture. There's a guy who grew up in Mexican California culture. There's a guy who grew up in actually Mexican culture in Mexico. But as generations move on, they change. And in fact, that's not the important part here. When you're growing up, your parents are teaching you a way to live. And oftentimes it's a part that doesn't resonate with you. Or oftentimes there's a part which is confusing for you. Oftentimes there's a part which is too authoritative. And one of the things that happens when we're in our early 20s, when we break from that, or perhaps earlier from that, and perhaps later than that, is that we start to find our independence. In our first stage of independence, which is so common for young men, where we can take it a bit too far at times, or perhaps we don't have enough of this discussion or a community discussion about it, is the rebellion. Is the reacting against the ways that we grew up, or reacting against the ways that we were forced or enforced or heavily encouraged to live. And we break from that. And this is a key part in how we live, how we become men, how we become independent, how we become human beings that can think on our own. And so much of that is a stepping away and a breaking of those things. For myself, it was trying to do as much of the opposite, trying to do the direct opposite of what my parents showed me, or the culture that I grew up in, the type of vibe or the different values that were taught. I wanted to experiment with everything, and I wanted to experiment with everything, but is a big break and a big separation, a total rebellion. So if it was to be good, I wanted it to be bad. If it was to be stationary and stable, I wanted it to be erratic and crazy and wild in all these different ways. And from that, I learned a huge amount. And I don't want to impede anybody's track on that sort of rebellion, but I want people to notice that it happens and perhaps why it happens. Why it happens is because there's a point where I need to believe in myself as a man. I need to believe that I can make it happen. I need to also fuck up on my own. I need to get hurt on my own. I need to get lost on my own. And I need to not need to be dependent upon something so I can just freely think or freely be angry. Now, what happens then is when reality sets in, or those types of things, or perhaps you grow up, your brain changes, different life situations come into play. And what tends to happen is we start to realize the full circle of it, or one of the full circles, is why our parents were teaching this. So perhaps it was to go to church. Perhaps it was to study in a certain way. Perhaps it was to do these different things, which may not matter in the overall part of it. But the real reason behind all of this was to give you the best opportunity they could understand. This was a hard thing for me. I grew up with tons of stuff that I interpreted as abuse. I didn't like, I don't really say those things anymore about my life, and I have a different understanding of them. But man, my childhood, my way of growing up, I did not interpret well at the time. I did not feel good about it. It was very easy for me to walk away from those things and move into that rebellion naturally. This was something that was, when people would tell me, like, your parents were just trying to do the best job they knew how, I was like, how could they do that? They so willfully, did not make that the feeling that I felt in that time. But see, as I grew up, as I went on to have kids, as I went on to learn through the school of hard knocks, many different things about my life of how to, put myself out there, how to make mistakes, how to rebound from them, how to build different things in my life, and how to watch them crumble right before my eyes without being able to do anything, is what I learned was perhaps the principle behind that and the similarities that I had within my parents. In fact, a big thing for me, which is so prominent, is to see how my mother, who is a very authoritative person and speaks her mind and all this sort of stuff, and you ever get a chance to meet her, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about, but also a rebel in her own right. Also somebody who decided that she wanted to do things in her own way to breach barriers and other sorts of different ways of lifestyles than her parents. And see, I think the thing is that we got to realize is that we're all trying to do the same thing with different interpretations. What we believe works for us, what we believe is the best way, will ultimately get proven wrong, or there will be other ways to find that message. And it's not our job to find it ourselves. What the key is that we need to let this natural flow of humanity, the generations, teach other things, to let new things grow, to let new interpretations of life come around. And what does stay the same? What stays the same is I want to do my best. I want the people around me to do my best, and I want to be happy. I want things to work for me. Right now, so much in the United States and all over the world is in all this conflict, and it always has been. This has always been through history, and anytime societies get big, this happens. But so much conflict of what needs to happen, what's going to happen, how we need to act, and how we see the rebellion live throughout so many people's lives. When the real point in that rebellion, the real fuel behind why things need to change, why we get heated up, what we get angry about, what we need to assert ourselves upon, what we need to fight for, even the things which might fuel our hate, is really the beauty, the potential that we see in ourselves, in humanity, and in our community. And the fact that we can't achieve it with our specific different ways of why we think it will work this way or how we think it needs to happen is what is behind so much of our fight. What we need to get into is the love, the humanity, the ideal nature of what we have, and to find that. Those types of thoughts aren't going to make you weak. Humanity's not going away. Life isn't going away. People's unifications and people's expressions of culture aren't going away. What is always going to stay there, and what's going to bring it to your own peace, and even my own peace, and our group's own peace, is the welcoming of those things. Not everything's a threat. Not everything's going to kill you. And part of the wisdom of being a human being, an adult, and a man, having some wisdom and maturity within you, is knowing when it is time to fight and when it is time to kind of chill out. I think it's very important to listen to this discussion and how we're going on about it tonight, is how we found our independence, how we found our value of self, how we found the beauty that we could see in the world and what our potential was in there. And our first stage in that was almost always rebellion. But to gain the true richness and wisdom, and like I said, so many of us are all on this road, and I'll probably transition more and more. One thing that I know about myself is I'm going to be wrong or change my mind about things all the time. That's part of the great things about being a human. Everything of my born to be qualities of, my sexual expression, my social expression, my ambition, my passions, these are all very pliable things that change because our brains can change, because we can learn, because we can adapt, because we can grow. But some of those fundamentals that never change is that potential, is that journey, is the depth of self that we learn from one another and that we learn from challenging ourselves in different ways. How can we do that minus the immaturity of the rebellion? And if we do need to fight, when can we know when it's the right time and go completely full at it? And when can we sit back and realize the unifying values that we all have within each other? I know there's a lot of stuff going on, and we're talking about a lot of crazy stuff, and we're spinning off on this call into some of the greatest things that we do. That's why I love it. That's why I put it together. And man, I can't tell you how much it's become such a template for me to, on Wednesday nights, on Saturday mornings, on Thursday evenings, on Sundays, that go all the way through Mondays on our different calls. Man, how much it affects my life and so many other men out there. If you're a guy that wants to chime in on this sort of dialogue, Dare I call it wisdom? Dare I call it a program to coach from? But what it really is men unifying to be able to see their best selves and realize that the road to their best self has many, many different paths. And sometimes you need to take the time to walk on them all. And sometimes that means you walk down one and have to walk down the other way and find a new road. But that's how we do it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. If you're interested in that or want to be a part of this community, man, click the free stuff link down below, download the Primal Drive workbook, do it, and there will soon be a 7-day challenge that's attached to that or whenever you're watching that, which, man, will really show you the power that we get from a group of talking to each other and realizing, man, the potential in you is awesome. The adaptability in you is awesome. Why would you let that go? Why would you cheapen that with the force driven by an insecurity of not being able to articulate or truly express that beauty that you see in others, the world, and the world around you? Let's make the world a great place by listening, sharing, communicating, connecting, and not putting walls up in front of each other. All right, talk to you guys soon. Daily Awesome. I'm out. I got to get back on this call. Like I said, it's late, man. So we're all kind of tired and we're spacing out in this cool zone, but man, it's a beautiful thing. I'll talk to you guys later.